the global military-industrial complex. In the 21st century, the most profitable business on earth is war, fought under what is now known as the global military-industrial complex. In 1961, President Dwight Eisenhower used his farewell address in January of that year to address his nation. Eisenhower, a five-star general who commanded the Allies on D-Day in Normandy, a two-term president, used his farewell speech to warn the American people about what he called the military-industrial complex. He was the one to coin the phrase. He further warned that all US citizens needed to keep a firm eye on what he called the unwarranted influence of the military, his military. He went on to warn them that they needed to keep a special eye on the possibility that public policy in the future could indeed become captive to a scientific or indeed a technological age. That, in fact, has happened. But what is the global military-industrial complex? It is the very close relationship between government, the military, and the arms makers, like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and BAE Systems, to name just three. In democratic institutions, those relationships are not meant to be breached. And yes, they have been breached. And that is precisely what Eisenhower was warning about. But let us look at some staggering statistics. Today in the world we have 196 countries. 65 of those countries are at war. There are 650 militias. All of those 650 militias and all the conventional armies in the entire world need to be armed. But let's look at arms sales. According to the International Institute for Strategic Studies, America spent and spends 3% of its GDP every 12 months on arms procurement. The top 12 nations in the world that procured arms in the year of 2014 was said to have spent $2 trillion US. That estimate is considered to be quite conservative because China and Russia's arms race is hard to quantify. That's a terrifying proposition and or fact to deal with. But importantly, today, what we have is, many decades ago, Daniel Ellsberg produced what was known as the Pentagon Papers. He's still alive and giving lectures. And the Pentagon Papers proved conclusively that the Vietnam War was indeed a manufactured war. We now know that the Iraq War was indeed a manufactured war. And the manufacturing of wars keeps countries, look at America, for 55 years, America has been in a perpetual state of war. With perpetual war, you have perpetual loss of life, but you have the perpetual profits to the arms industry. But you have the perpetuity and enlargement of the global military industrial complex. all extraordinarily frightening. We, humanity, are being threatened with climate change by the very same people that are part of the relationship and part of the structure of the global military-industrial complex. That in itself is a giant contradiction in terms. But we are further not alone having imaginary wars like war on terror against invisible enemies, but there are other extraordinary things taking place. Like we, the general global population, are being desensitized by the global mass media, very deliberately, to take away from us things that we naturally feel, like sorrow, shock, and empathy, because you can only be so shocked. But we have to ask ourselves, are we without conscience? Do we really want to live in a state of continuous, perpetual war? Is this what we want for the future of our grandchildren? And if not, then we've got to rise up, educate ourselves, come together in vast numbers, dismantle this horrible structure, and divert those trillions of dollars towards the 7.5 billion of us that are on this planet today. Yes, Dwight, you had much to worry about. All your fears have come to fruition, but on a scale simply unimaginable.